Have you seen Star Wars?
Man, what a time to be a Star Wars fan. I remember growing up and basically seeing the prequels go from really disdained by the fandom. A lot of older fans didn't like them. Even a lot of like modern day fans were kind of disheartened by them. And a lot of people kind of left the Star Wars fandom after the prequels. And things got better when the Clone Wars came out, and then Disney bought Star Wars, and we had new content, and things shifted. But now we're in this unique time where people who are like me, who are maybe a little older, a little younger, who grew up with the prequels, they don't really remember the disdain that a lot of people had for them, but they also just have a very fond memory of these movies because to us they actually meant a lot, and a lot of people apparently really do like these movies, and it has grown in popularity over the years. And even Ewan McGregor has acknowledged this in a recent interview with Entertainment Weekly, and that's today's video, talking about how he is reacted to the wave of positivity to the prequels, and even Hayden Christensen says something about it as well. Before we get into that, please leave a like on today's video and subscribe to the channel for more Star Wars content. So in this interview, Ewan McGregor talks about the prequel reception and explain that he sees a new wave of positivity when it comes to this trilogy. And he says, now I meet people who we made these films for, who were the kids of that time. And our Star Wars films are their Star Wars films. And the way that Carrie Fisher and Alec Guinness and Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford's films were ours, were theirs. And that's a beautiful thing, that it's still important to these kids who we made them for. It's just so nice to finally get that wave of positivity about them. And I love that he can even see and acknowledge this, because with the rise of like the prequel memes Reddit page, I think that's like probably the most popular, even more popular than the like official Star Wars subreddit. You see prequel memes everywhere when it comes to the Star Wars fandom, and a lot of it is just kind of like, jokes of like, hey, like there are corny things in these movies, but we like that corny aspect of them, and they've kind of aged a little better than what a lot of people thought they would. And in general, people just like these movies, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's really cool to see the revitalization of this trilogy to the point that we now have shows based from it. I mean, this Obi-Wan Kenobi series would not be possible, in my opinion, if people did not like the prequel trilogy. And it shows the uniqueness of someone like George Lucas to cast someone so great as Ewan McGregor in this amazing role as Obi-Wan, who was already an amazing character before Ewan took on the mantle of it. And now that we look back at the prequel trilogy, he's one of the highlights. And it's crazy that the simple casting of Ewan McGregor and the wave of positivity that the prequels did have after 10 years after they released, pretty much all of that resulted in him coming back to fulfill this role. I mean, they even said the guy who plays Uncle Owen, I can't even remember his name, sadly, but the guy who plays Uncle Owen in the prequel trilogy, he comes back in the new Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And Deborah Chow said, George Lucas, thank you for hiring this guy. I mean, that shows kind of the duality of George Lucas, of like, people were really critical of the story and a lot of the, fundamental decisions that he made in those prequels. But it is amazing how even just the small things that he controlled to such a fine line, because he had an absolute say over everything, such as casting, those have these ripple effects that show massive benefits down the line. And so it's almost like, well, are you okay with having the prequels not be as good as the originals if they result in these kind of great fan service moments where you get Ewan McGregor back 10 to 15 years later and 17 years later? I think the answer is yes. But Ewan McGregor goes on to talk about the negative reaction that people had to the prequel trilogy, mainly after the release of The Phantom Menace in 1999. And he says this: I found it quite hard. For it to come out and get knocked so hard was personally quite difficult to deal with. And also, it was quite early in my career. I didn't really know how to deal with that. I'd been involved with things that didn't make much of a ripple, but that's different from making something that makes a negative ripple. And then Hayden Christensen gave his thoughts on the critical reception and the reaction that people had. He says, when the films came out and the critics were very critical, of course, that was a difficult thing, because you care so much about this thing that you've invested so much of yourself into. So for sure, that's challenging. Hayden has always kind of been reserved and very cordial about the mixed reactions. I appreciate you, and normally being a little bit more open, even about us Star Wars fans. I mean, he's been honest that we Star Wars fans back in the day were fucking crazy, and he's not wrong. What I really feel like is that the conversation around the prequels has kind of moved on. Like you either like them or you don't at this point, and there's people who are just simply indifferent to them. And I am really happy to see that because I feel like that helps us evolve as a fandom. I mean, could you imagine if, like, put the sequel trilogy aside and all the movies that Disney released aside, let's just say we were still debating if the prequels were good or bad to this day. I think it would be a tired out conversation. I mean, clearly it's been 17 years since they released. Oh, Jesus Christ, 17 years. But like, I mean, who wants to talk about it for that long? You know, I mean, we still will. There are people like me who just aren't fans of the prequel trilogy, and I have a lot of complaints about them, of course. But they also hold a very special spot in my heart. And truth be told, I've kind of gotten this weird relationship with the Phantom Menace since like 2019, where that is now like my comfort Star Wars movie. Like if I'm gonna put on a Star Wars movie and just kind of like zone out, and maybe I fall asleep on a lot of them now because I've seen them so many times. They're just comfort films now, and so if like I'm laying on the couch or watching them at home, I'll fall asleep. But the Phantom Menace specifically, something about it, man. I feel like that is the last true like George Lucas style Star Wars movie, even compared to Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, because that feels more akin to the original trilogy than the rest of the prequels. And it's weird to have that relationship with these movies because they mark certain times in our lives, of course, but they also mark, you know, who we are, and kind of reflecting on looking back on these kind of movies and the impacts that they had on us. I am not a fan of the prequels by any means, but I really appreciate and respect these movies a lot more as I've gotten older than I did even 5 years ago. And it's hard to put into words why I feel that way. It's just, I don't think I have that same relationship with some of the newer Star Wars movies that I think I'm going to look back on in 10 to 15 years and be like, you know, I have a newfound appreciation for them. I think if anything, I'll look back at the new Star Wars movies like the sequels and be like, I really appreciate the time that they came out, because those were very formative years for me, because I was, you know, a teenager. I was going through high school and all that stuff when like The Force Awakens came out and Rogue One came out. So I will look back on the sequels with these kind of unique memories of the time period they came out in. But when I look at the prequels, I look at them as more of a childhood memory, but also something that I have grown to really appreciate in my new years of life, I guess, just because, well, I mean, I don't know, there's something unique about them that feels like a time capsule from the 90s and the early 2000s, and they are the last little bit of George Lucas Star Wars that we can truly look at and say that this was the creator's vision and what he was trying to do. And it's crazy that even 17 years later, we're still feeling this kind of really good wave of positivity for these movies, especially considering that, you know, 23 years ago, they had such a negative reaction. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you guys think about Ewan McGregor talking about the wave of positivity that the prequels have? What do you think is the result of or not the results, the cause of this? What do you think is the reason that these movies are so beloved nowadays? Is it nostalgia? Is it rose-colored glasses or rose-tinted glasses? Is it just us having a little bit new take and a look at these movies? I'm really curious what you guys think. If you are a fan of the prequels, what makes you love them so much more today than you think people did back in the day? But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. Leave a like if you enjoyed today's video, and please subscribe to the channel for more Star Wars content. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Chatooine is on Wednesday nights. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube as well. Links to all that is in the description below. I'm Star Wars Only. I'll see you all next time, and may the Force be with you always.